Welcome to this explainer. When most people think of Kingdom Animalia, they just picture a massive, overwhelming list of complex scientific names to memorize. But today, we're going to completely flip that script. We're going to look at this as a thrilling, sequential journey of biological tech upgrades. Think of it like looking at the release history of life itself on Earth, starting from the most basic, bare-bones startup models, all the way up to highly engineered and incredibly complex biological machines. It's actually a fascinating story. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start by decoding the basic rules of the kingdom, look at how scientists sort everything, meet nature's early innovators, move on to the advanced invertebrates, and then finally arrive at the chordate connection. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Decoding Kingdom Animalia. Let's establish our baseline. Okay, so the absolutely crucial starting point is that every single organism we're going to discuss today shares the same core biological programming. Number 1, they are eukaryotic, meaning their cells actually have a defined nucleus. Number 2, they are entirely multicellular. You won't find any single-celled loners here. And number 3, and this is a really big differentiator from plants, they completely lack a cell wall. Now, as you can see here, this kingdom is incredibly vast. It's broken down into 10 major phyla, running from Porifera all the way down to Chordata. And yeah, I know, this looks like a lot to take in at first glance, but scientists actually sort this massive list primarily by looking at one main defining feature, whether or not they have a notochord. We're going to get into exactly what a notochord is a bit later, but just keep that in the back of your mind as our main dividing line. Moving right along to Section 2, the rules of sorting. How do we even begin to classify all this life? Well, this categorization by Robert Whittaker acts like a brilliant biological matrix. It basically shows how specific traits mix and match across different organisms. Think of it like a highly illogical checklist. We look at body organization. Are they just a bunch of loose cells? Do they have tissues, or do they have full-blown organs? We look at symmetry. Are they totally asymmetrical, radial, or bilateral? We also map out their germinal layers, monoblastic, diploblastic, triploblastic, and check for the presence of a body cavity, which is called a coelom. It's a super efficient way to sort millions of species. Which brings us to Section 3, nature's early innovators. Let's look at the very first animal models. What's amazing is that you can literally track the physical progression of life right here. It upgrades sequentially. Nature starts with a loose collection of basic cells, figures out how to form them into specialized tissues, develops that into distinct working organs, and eventually culminates in complex, interconnected organ systems. Starting at the very beginning, we have phylum Porifera, which you probably know as sponges. Here, we're seeing nature's earliest plumbing system at work. Their bodies are completely asymmetric and rely on just basic cellular organization. They literally just have pores called ostia for water entry and a main exit called the osculum, creating a vital water canal system to filter food. Notably, these guys completely lack any form of locomotion. They're entirely stationary. They just park in one spot and filter away. But then, the next major upgrade arrives with phylum Colenterata, also known as Cnidaria. This is a big one, because it introduced actual tissue organization. And, importantly, it brought in a serious defense mechanism. They developed these poisonous cnidoblast cells right on their tentacles. They can exist either as stationary rod-like polyps, like a hydra, or as free-moving umbrella-like medusas. Think of the jellyfish you might see washing up at the beach. Then we hit a massive evolutionary milestone with platyhelminthes, or flatworms. Nature developed the very first specific organ right here. It's called the protonephridia, and it basically acted as a primitive excretory system. This phylum also marks a major design shift to bilateral body symmetry and triploblastic germ layers. It essentially sets the structural stage for much more complex internal biology. And the innovations just rapidly continued with Aschelhelminthes, the roundworms. They took that single organ idea from the flatworms and upgraded it to the very first complete organ system. But even more fascinating, this is where we see the very first separation of sexes in the animal kingdom, a biological trait known as being dioecious.
Okay, Section 4, the advanced invertebrates. Things are about to get highly specialized.
So, phylum Annelida, which famously includes your garden variety earthworms, represents a huge leap forward. They are the very first true land-dwelling or terrestrial animals.
Now, to actually survive away from being totally submerged in water all the time, they were outfitted with the first closed blood circulation system, alongside a segmented body plan that gives them incredible flexibility.
But hey, if we're talking true mobility and total global dominance, phylum Arthropoda absolutely takes the prize. They are the very first walking animals in all of evolutionary history. And they achieve this thanks to their revolutionary development of connected, jointed legs. To give you an idea of how effective this was, this walking design was so wildly successful that arthropods now make up a staggering 2/3 of all animal species on Earth. From insects to spiders to ancient living fossils like the limulus, they form the absolute largest animal empire on our planet. It's not even close. And when you look closely at their biological specs, it's pretty easy to see why they conquered the world. They feature an upgraded armor-like chitin exoskeleton. Their bodies are hyper-organized into 3 distinct specialized segments: the head, thorax, and abdomen. And crucially, they developed a highly advanced nervous system centered around a brain-like structure called a supraganglion. They are highly efficient machines. Following right behind the arthropods in sheer numbers is Mollusca, which is the second largest phylum. They developed a specialized rasping tongue-like organ called a radula to process their food, and many deployed heavy calcium carbonate shells for protection. After them, we have Echinodermata, like the starfish. They feature protective body spikes and absorb water using an incredibly unique, almost plant-like water vascular system. Bridging the gap between all these wildly diverse invertebrates and our final, most complex group is phylum Hemichordata. They serve as the literal evolutionary connecting link. These are exclusively marine worms that feature specialized structures, like a proboscis gland for excretion, which strongly hints at the much more advanced systems that were about to come next. And that brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the chordate connection, the final tier of complexity. Remember our core classification rule from way back at the beginning, the notochord? This flowchart perfectly shows how the notochord is the definitive VIP feature that separates all the simpler non-chordates we just reviewed from the highly developed chordates. In advanced vertebrates like mammals, birds, and us humans, this notochord eventually develops into a full-blown vertebral column. When you compare them side by side, you can see the complete architectural contrast between the two groups. Chordates boast a dorsal, hollow, and single nerve cord, and a heart situated on the ventral side. This completely flips the blueprint of the non-chordates, which have a ventral, solid nerve cord and a dorsal heart. Chordates also uniquely feature pharyngeal gill slits and a post-anal tail at some stage in their development. So looking back at this incredible logical sequence of biological innovation, from simple water pores in stationary sponges all the way up to the advanced nervous systems and vertebral columns of chordates, it leaves us with one really fascinating question to take away today. With all these millions of years of rigorous, continuous upgrades under its belt, what biological feature is nature going to engineer next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it gave you a totally new perspective on the animal kingdom.